Roughly 20% of the men and women who serve in Iraq or Afghanistan will struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, but often they struggle silently. And that's why Jennifer Clark, a Lynn Haven physician's assistant and now an author, is sharing her story with others to find hope. Jennifer was deployed in Afghanistan with a team of Green Berets in 2008 as an Air Force physician's assistant. After months of treating masses of people, she returned to the U.S., but in the depths of despair and struggling with PTSD. We're honored to have Jennifer join us this morning with more on how her journey to overcome PTSD, she overcame it and now is absolutely thriving, and what she's doing today to help others do the same. And Jen, if you can touch on this, I mean, what you saw over in Afghanistan was harrowing. You came back a different person. You realized you weren't the same. How did you decide, how did you struggle through it and overcome it?
Well, you know, when I first got back, everything was great. I was so happy to be home with my family. And then over time, just started to kind of creep back in, and I just really realized I had a problem. And, you know, I got to a point where I realized, you know, kind of in the depths of my pain that I had to make a choice. You know, I could let this, you know, PTSD consume me and define who I was moving forward, or I could, you know, make a choice and get through it. And so I chose to do that.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that you are helping to encourage others to make that same choice is through this incredible book that you've written. Tell us about this. It's newly released, and it's based on the journals that you wrote while on deployment.
Yes. You know, I kept a journal when I was there, really to just document that snapshot of my life for my family. And as I got back and, you know, I struggled with the PTSD, and then I started to really come through that. I realized that that story was just so much bigger than myself. And, you know, I think people are just so incredibly hungry for hope. And this is a story that really does illustrate how, first of all, our men and women in the service are just going through so much over there, and what they bring home. But it's also a story to let them know that they can come through that even better than they were before. So
absolutely, that they can see that as terrible, terrible things that they've seen, but somehow be able to help others who have struggled. So this really translates, not only does it apply to our military men and women, and we have so many here in this area, but also anyone who has struggled with trauma.
Yes, absolutely. Anything traumatic in your life, I mean, sometimes it just becomes so big and you don't think that there's a way through it, but there is a reason these things happen, and that there is, you know, a way to get through that. So
there's always hope. There's always hope. And Jen, if people are interested in the book that was newly released, how can they find it?
Well, if they want a signed copy, they can go to the website that I have, which is backtocenterwellness.com. They can also find it on Amazon. There's a Kindle edition as well as just the hardcover, and then it's also on barnesandnoble.com.
Fantastic. And we've created a link to Jennifer's website on WJHG.com, where you can learn more about her as well as buy her book. And Jen actually speaks at many of the local bases as well as other events to encourage others who are dealing with trauma how to find hope. In fact, you're speaking at Tyndall today.
I am, yes.
Fantastic. We'll have much more on Jen's story coming up in our next half hour.
The latest statistics show roughly 20% of the men and women who served in Iraq or Afghanistan will struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder or other mental illness. Meredith has more.
Donna, these heroes left the safety and comfort of life in the U.S. to protect our freedom, but returned as different people, often suffering from nightmares, flashbacks, and emotional numbness. But there is hope. A Lynn Haven woman is sharing her journey so others realize they don't have to struggle alone.
He said, geez.
Jennifer Clark looks like any other happily married, busy working mom. But finding joy in walks and wagon rides is a major victory after post-traumatic stress disorder left her life unraveling.
I was deployed in Afghanistan in 2008 with a team of Army Green Berets, and I actually was located at the most violent fire base in Afghanistan.
An Air Force physician's assistant stationed at Tyndall at the time, Jennifer was part of a female treatment team, gathering intelligence while providing medical care to Afghan women and children, many of them ravaged by violence.
I kind of call it the brutalities and realities of war. It was just heartbreaking.
After 166 days of treating masses of people, she returned to the U.S., but in the depths of despair.
I would come home and I would just sit and cry for no reason. Things just really got to me, like gunfire and loud noises and crowds.
Then the flashbacks began.
The very first flashback I had from the deployment was the second day I brought my little girl home from the hospital. And I was up in the middle of the night and I was trying to feed her. I looked down at her and I didn't see my daughter. I saw a dying baby that I had taken care of.
That's when Jen knew she needed help. She reached out to Tyndall's mental health clinic.
They did what's called exposure therapy, where I just had to kind of go back and relive and feel the emotions that were attached to the things that I experienced.
But so many of her comrades suffer silently.
They feel ashamed because they weren't strong enough. At least that's how I felt.
Studies show treatment for PTSD is effective. Left untreated, it can spiral out of control. For Jen, it came down to making a choice.
When I was in the deepest, darkest parts of my PTSD, something, by the grace of God, it came over me, and I really realized I could sit here and let this consume me and define who I am from this point on, or I could move on.
Today, Jen is moving on, focused on the future and helping others conquer battles from the past they're still fighting in their minds.
It's just getting people to realize that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's where I feel my calling is.
Well, Jen felt called to write a book about her experience to help others struggling with PTSD. It's called 166 Days, My Journey Through the Darkness. She's also started the Back to Center Wellness Foundation. She frequently speaks at military bases and at other events to encourage anyone dealing with trauma. For more information or to buy a book, log on to WJHG.com for a link to her website. Donna?
You know what's amazing about that story, Meredith, is when I see somebody like Jennifer Clark. It's just, you know, she seems like a great average mom in our community working, and we don't always see those struggles. And when you really hear her story and realize this is somebody in our community who's been through so much and is doing so much to help others, that's pretty amazing.
It really is. And just a reminder, there is always hope. There is always hope. And Jen's life is a testimony to that.
And I hope that her story helps others, just as she intends. Thank you so much. What a story.